I've had a long life with video games. It's had its big up moments and every once in a while comes a down moment. Of course, if video games weren't as fun as they were, well, why would I be a part of them? However, searching and playing new video games is a vague game to play. We don't know what secrets hide in every video game that will either enlighten us or infuriate us, despite what the CD case tells us. And that's where this list comes in. We've all been in that trap before. We hear about a game and we get hyped up for it. It could be by word of mouth, by review scores, by its reputation. It could be a sequel to a game series you love, and then it just gouges you to the heart at just how disappointing it was. So on to the rules. Rule number 1. A disappointing game is when it doesn't live up to an individual person's expectations, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game in general. And rule number 2. I'll be avoiding games that aren't for me for my personal tastes in the first place. So games I tried like Half-Life 2, Minecraft, and Fallout 3 are out because there isn't any enthusiasm for me to play those games in the first place, so no hype means no disappointment. With that, let's get started. Oh my god. My first entry is from the Splinter Cell series. For those who don't know, Splinter Cell is an all-out stealth series. What stands it out from other stealth titles is how much is focused from your on-the-spot thinking and improvising with situations as they come up. It's honestly a really fun series, but I would only recommend it to those who love stealth games. The first two games, the original and Pandora's Tomorrow, have definitely aged in places, but they're still fun for loyal fans. Chaos Theory, the third game, is hands down the best stealth game I've played in my life, period. The amount of flexibility, how user-friendly it is, the alternate routes, the improved controls, I can't contain how happy this game makes me. And then, the fourth game came out. Splinter Cell Double Agent on all of its ports is honestly still a great stealth game. It kept a lot of its concepts from Chaos Theory, which I appreciate, but it's lacking in a few areas to keep the game immersive. First, as the title implies, you have to strike a middle ground with the two groups you're working for with objectives. The NSA, the government you work for, and the JBA, the enemy organization you work for. One will tell you to save innocent lives, the other will tell you to kill people, stuff like that. The objective of the game is to keep a satisfactory profile with both sides or else it's game over, so you can't stray too far to one side. It sounds awesome, but in execution it's lackluster and doesn't affect anything long term with the story itself. It's kind of like Shadow the Hedgehog and its true ending. True, you can choose where you can go throughout the game, but the last story segment of the game cancels out your choices, and that's honestly really stupid. By the time you reach the last mission in Double Agent, you automatically throw off your enemy disguise and work for the NSA, so there's only one ending to the game. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? In the end, your choices don't matter, and then Sam Fisher double crosses the NSA anyways, so what the hell kind of ending is that? The second thing that's disappointing is that the levels are either entirely pointless or entirely basic. The pointless levels come with that every once in a while you sneak into the JBA headquarters and get some info from them, but the fingerprint scanning and objectives never felt satisfying or worth my time. The other missions feel too elementary in level design compared to the other games. There isn't alternate routes, nothing to keep the suspense up, the enemies were few and far between. They just didn't commit to it like the rest of the series did. The controls are still spectacular like Chaos Theory, but with the lackluster story, no incentive to work with the game's main mechanic, boring or basic levels, it hit me hard. It hit me hard. What a disappointment. And to think, we're only on number 10. Trust me, I've been gaming for a long time. I've got plenty of poop to scoop up and throw to you. Oh my god. Now this one I don't think I need too much introduction. Now everyone here knows I'm a hardcore gamer, but because these games take a lot out of you, I need those games in my life where I really don't want to do a whole lot. Thus comes in my favorite franchise of all time. That would be The Sims. Boy, this series brings out a bunch of joy and warm fuzzy feelings in casually customizing your environment and watching your creations grow up and have minds of their own. It's touching to grow up alongside with them and take care of them. And besides, I love pets. Oh crap, I just called humans pets, didn't I? Ooh. Anyways, now if you happen to be a Sims fan, something dreadful happened in 2014. For any Sims fans out there, I'm so sorry to bring back those feelings. The Sims 4. This is where one of my weaknesses works against me. You see, I'm very dismissive of the internet, because trust me, I'm just not a bandwagon type of guy at all. I like to look at games fairly for both their positives and negatives, rather than blindly agree with what the internet labels things. However, because of this poison, I blindly picked up the game and wanted to give it a fair chance. And while that's an honorable move, I have to agree, EA didn't even try with this one. So to start, I wasn't actually disappointed at first. For the first 30 hours of the game, I had some fun. There were some things to experiment with and try out that kept me occupied, but the overall package left so much more potential for it in the long run past the 30 hours. Every time I looked at a new concept they executed in this game, I kept thinking that they could have expanded on something to make it better or more engaging. So let's start with a few good things I happen to like. I like the emotion system. I do like that your neighbors are walking the streets regularly, and the graphics and customization is decent in a few places, but it's not good enough, not by a long shot. What makes the Sims series so fantastic is its attention to detail, which they did so awesomely well in the first 3 games. Putting in stuff you wouldn't expect that makes you fiddle around with a lot of its mechanics, and it was bloody glorious. In this one, it honestly felt like they made the game out of obligation. There was no passion, no flair, no rainbows, everything just felt gray and stale. Nothing exploded or bloomed from what they brought us here. Oh, it hurts. It hurts. But thankfully I went back to The Sims 3 and my PlayStation 2 titles for therapy, so it's all good. As for number 8 coming up next, I got no bandages for it. Let's move on. Oh my god. Once the Sega Genesis passed, I grew up with the Nintendo 64. That is one of my most adored systems. Want to know how much I love the Nintendo 64? Before getting one for myself at 9 years old, I used to spy through my neighbor's windows watching them play it. I was 9. People do dumb things at 9 years old. Anyways, my first game with it was Super Mario Bros. 64. And well, you can picture my response. It was kinda like, yeah. It was a platformer. Was it the only platformer? No, it wasn't. Then came the Bear and Bird duo, Banjo-Kazooie, along with Banjo-Tooie to add on to that. 2 more awesome games to add on to the instant classic library. Then came Donkey Kong 64, my favorite game out of the trio with its wide diversity of playing styles and characters. And that's it. Those are the platformers I played during my N64 times. But wait a second, didn't I leave another platformer out? When the internet grew in popularity, I became aware of this game, and oh boy, the hype was real. I loved the Nintendo 64. I loved all of its platformers, so I must love this game. It's pretty much in the Nintendo 64 nostalgia contract that I have to like this game. Only except I didn't. I did not like Conkers Bad Fur Day. So what is it about Conkers Bad Fur Day that fell below expectations? It's just not that interesting of a game to me at any level. Now hold on, remember guys, I came across this game at 23 years old and I have no nostalgia goggles, so that's going to factor in with a few things. The character interactions in this game have aged badly in my opinion. They sound monotone, they're badly edited together, have broken English, and the drollness of their voices just destroys the immersion for me. About the humor this game gives off, can't say I found this game funny in any respect, because the delivery of it is so poorly handled from what I said earlier from the characters. They all sound like they need cough syrup half the time, and that was enough of a distraction to keep me involved with it. Now normally my second point would be about the gameplay itself, the platforming, but here's where I've got to be frank. I don't care about it. I don't care about this game or the gameplay aspect at all. A lot of gamers have told me that it's the platforming that sells this game, just like the earlier Nintendo 64 games, but I highly disagree. I personally think that if you can't get invested with these characters and the presentation of its humor, at which is more of the central focus to this game, then no offense, but it creamed every sense in wanting to play this game again. I don't want to play it again. Ever. The reason I put it at number 8 was that I kind of had a small feeling it was going to be a disappointment in the first place. The game never really appealed to me from what I saw about it. I'm disappointed in that the hype for it came from a classic Nintendo 64 game, and well, that's some big hype to be smashed. And it left one ugly scar in its wake. Oh well, disappointments happen, I guess. Oh my god. Number 7 is Duke Nukem Forever. You know what? Curse my optimism sometimes. It can really bite my butt sometimes with cases like this. Duke Nukem Forever came out in 2011 to negative to mixed reviews. And well, coming across this in 2015, I thought, hey, guess what? I bet I could find some positive light the internet won't find because they like to negatize everything. Stupid decision to make. And now I've got this game on my disappointing games ledger because of it. So to clear some things up, there are some things I don't mind about this game. I don't mind Duke Nukem taking a piss at the start of the game. I don't mind the bland humor that it tries to force in. I don't care about the regenerating health or the 2-weapon limit either. Any of those cliches kind of things. Those things just happen not to bother me. As long as the game was good, that was all I cared about. And the verdict on that, it wasn't a good game at all in my opinion, and I'm going to beat this game down into the ground right now. It isn't buggy or glitchy as far as I can tell from my experiences, so I'll give it that positive. But it is laughably uninspired. I personally think that this game is the most mediocre first-person shooter I've ever played. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, even Call of Duty? Now hold up, I haven't spoken up about my thoughts about Call of Duty yet, but for anyone who knows my personality is that I don't have a problem with it in the slightest. It's primitive, yes, I agree with that, but it's still fun from my side. If I like shooting guns, if I like mindlessly shooting people or demons, like in the case of Doom, and I like the fast-paced action, then it's natural that I'm going to enjoy first-person shooters. For others, shooting has worn out as welcome, and I can understand that for those who aren't into Call of Duty. But for me, I still find novelty with my guns and shooting people. Sheesh, this is starting to sound dark. In fact, let's compare the two. Now in Call of Duty, like it or hate it, you can't deny that there are enemies in your face all the time. This is good. It keeps the pace at a high speed and it keeps your eyes darting around for enemies to look for and shoot down or any other threats. It keeps the suspense there to keep the game engaging. That's good. This is essential to fast-paced first-person shooters. There's just no getting around that. Duke Nukem Forever, you have this.
Taste of my ball.
Duke Nukem Forever, unlike its Nintendo 64 counterpart, which is one of my favorite first-person shooters to date, has enemy encounters that take far longer to come by in less numbers. It has tedious, stupid puzzle sections, shrink ray moments where you climb furniture or ride RC cars, and trust me, it's boring. And the gameplay. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! After about a couple of hours, talk about a heartthrob. But thankfully though, Duke Nukem 64 still holds up awesomely well to today's standards in my opinion. So I just rubbed this game from my mind. Forever. Just as the title implies. Oh my god. As said earlier, I love my Sega Genesis. While I play Super Nintendo games and dip around in its library, some players, like me, return to their more nostalgic systems, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their favorite toys they grew up with and love playing, even today. Naturally, I bought the Sega Mega Collection Plus for the PlayStation 2 during my teenager years, and well, what do you think I did with it? Played every game on it, including the Game Gear games. Now that was a treat. If you don't know though, there are some hidden gems you can unlock with this one, like Flicky, which was underwhelming but fun for a few minutes, Comic Zone, another fun game I didn't know about, Ristar, it was okay, I thought it was rather finicky game to really enjoy though. And then we have number 6 on this list, the Ooze. What makes the Ooze so disappointing was that the premise sounded so awesome when I read up about it and the story. You get boiled down to a green liquid monster because the bad guys discovered that the protagonist knew of their plans. So they tried to murder him, and now it's your time to get revenge. Plus you could collect your DNA strands, adding to some replayability. This sounded like a legendary adventure to behold. Let's play it. Only the execution was bad. How bad? The Ooze, in my opinion, is my least favorite Sega Genesis game of all time, and it would be a serious contender for the top 10 worst video games of all time in my books. I'm dead serious. It's worse than Shaq Fu. With this coming from one of my childhood consoles, it's not an easy pill to swallow. So let's go over its flaws, and trust me, I've got plenty. 1. The attacks are super finicky, hard to steer, and the hitbox for it is really small, especially at the diagonals. It's a chore to move yourself in the right spot to hit enemies. 2. There are so many cheap monsters and traps, some of them coming out of nowhere and some have ranged attacks, which doesn't bode well for the third reason. 3. You die if your head gets hit, no questions asked, so if a stray enemy attack hits it, boom, you're done. This really feels unforgiving. 4. The pacing and lack of variety in the environments is excruciating. You go through multiple acts of the same kinds of level and it really drags. The progress feels really slow and the levels are really long. 5. There's no map. So adding insult to injury, especially with me with bad navigation, you could get lost in some levels. 6. You only get 3 lives, meaning good luck lasting in this mess of gameplay mechanics. As for me, I never got past the 3rd level before game over. The point I'm trying to make is that everything is downright tedious and everything feels like a complete back-busting chore. And I've come back to this game a few times since then to see if it would hold up better, but wow, I just get hit with a truck of disappointment every time, and I feel a layer of dread just wash over my soul, just wondering how a video game can really be so taxing. It's amazing, really. I've never seen anything like it. Oh my god. Me and my brother Jeffrey used to get into Pokemon. We played the first 2 generations and we had a lot of fun. And then other video games just happened to appeal to us and we never went back. Besides, going past 250 Pokemon just sounds a little silly. Being away from it for a while, I thought I'd try out its latest game at the time on my Nintendo DS at around 2006 to see if I'd get back into it. And it failed. Instead, it cemented that I will never play another Pokemon game again for a very long time. Pokemon Pearl is an awkward game to talk about because there isn't a single thing wrong on the technical level with it. It's Pokemon. Of course it's going to be in the top of its game and providing the best experience it can for those who do enjoy this game. And I understand, plenty of Pokemon fans will enjoy this game. Does it still mean that technically good video games can still fall below expectations for some players? Of course they can. The first thing I should start with about Pokemon Pearl is that it looked like a Pokemon game, but it didn't have the spirit of a Pokemon game. Pokemon Pearl felt like to me that Game Freak scanned through all the bullet points from its old templates from the previous games, but didn't get the big oof to make them feel real. And of course, I'll just list some examples and get ready because I have a lot of them. The running speed is a lot slower than the other games and has less animation frames, making it look weird. The environment felt too generic, like there wasn't ever anything interesting to see or anything to get me invested. Some routes feel really long and drawn out. The Pokemon battles themselves didn't help either. The fonts in them felt too formal, and they didn't click. I didn't feel engaged at any point. The gym leaders were completely forgettable, and the crime organization and anything to do with that flew over my head in remembering them. The rival, forget it. He was completely bland, and he had the attention span of a mouse to leave any proper impact. I could go on and on and on and on, but the bottom line was that after I did the 8 gym leaders, I retained nothing from the game. I'm dead serious. Even today, I don't remember the 3 starter Pokemon or the starter Pokemon I picked 10 years ago. And this left an impression with me back then, in that if this really is the way that Pokemon was going to go, I was done with the series. Of course, I played a Pokemon Ruby, so I know it was more of a standalone game of Pokemon Pearl being the problem and not the series. But yeah, back then, playing this game made my mind completely numb and robbed me of all emotion. It was in a whole nother astral plane of boredom that I never thought was ever possible to reach in a video game. Oh my god. Anyways, pop quiz, and I'll be amazed if someone knows this. Every time a Dynasty Warriors game comes out, 2 add-on games come out for each main series game that comes out to supplement it. They're like expansion packs. One is called Dynasty Warriors Extreme Legends, which adds on some cool features like extra missions, character creation, stuff like that. Now the second one is called Dynasty Warriors Empires. It's a Dynasty Warriors game that takes the game in a Risk board game fashion, where one army has to rule them all. Wow. That's a lot of games, easily into the double digits. So which one is the biggest disappointment? Dynasty Warriors Empires? Oh, you're waiting for a number. I didn't mean a number, which means I'm talking about the whole series. Now I need to go over what makes Dynasty Warriors a really fun series first before going into Empires. And if you go with the hit the same enemies over and over argument, then you're right. It is about that. But it is honestly shallow if you think that that's all that goes on in the series. You see, in Dynasty Warriors, you play the overpowered character, which sounds awesome, but here's the catch. While working with your objectives on a map, the enemy team will always have some big trap ready to try overpowering your team. Your job as the overpowered character is to root it out and stop it from interfering with your team's objectives. It may sound easy on paper and with me talking about it to you, but the strategy and fun of the game is knowing where to pick your battles. It's about taking risks, outsmarting the enemy tactics, and playing tug of war with different priorities at the same time, adding a lot of strategy in the mix, and that's where the big appeal comes from. Here, think of it this way. If you neglect to be in a certain spot at the right time, then your team suffers. And then there's a second spot that opens up where you're absolutely needed at the same time from your negligence. And then a third hole opens up, and then a fourth one, and soon enough, since you can't be everywhere at once when the enemy team mauls you, it will make the mission either extremely difficult or it'll be a game over if you fail in your objectives. But what makes this concept extremely fun is that the scenarios are very different from map to map, and Dynasty Warriors is very well known for having a lot of characters you can use. Plus you can ramp up the difficulty for some added challenge if it gets too easy for you. So I kid you not, if you're a huge Dynasty Warriors fan, you've sunken hundreds of hours into this franchise, no question about it. But if you're not into it, that's fine. It's not for everyone. Okay, now, like the original Dynasty Warriors, Empires is always fun. At first, just like Sims 4, the most fun you'll get out of this game is the first 10 hours in each installment. After that, you've seen pretty much everything each version can bring. So it begs the question, why do I keep buying them? That's because I keep hoping, deep down inside, that they will fix that replayability issue with each new game that comes out, and they don't. And that's why it's number 4. They don't fix the core problem to keep the experience going, and that makes me sad. So really, the one huge reason why the Empire series is disappointing is that while the areas are different, the objectives are the exact same every single stinking time. Just capture bases, then capture the command post. Whoop-de-doo! And it doesn't ever change. And that's stupid. Since the unique enemy traps are gone from the original, there's nothing stopping you as the overpowered character from mowing everybody down very easily and winning every single time. True, you can do things like buy soldiers and add enhancements to play around with for the first 10 hours, but after playing 1 or 2 long games, there's nothing new to offer. I highly recommend the original games if you want to try it out, especially Dynasty Warriors 7. Take it from me, if you want to try out the series, try Dynasty Warriors 7. It is by far the best in the series, but for the Empires games, stay away. They're the most monotonous games alive.
my god.
My cousin introduced me to the Final Fantasy series. I saw him playing number 9 on numerous occasions when I was with him, and I had a blast watching him. I was mesmerized by the gameplay, the strategy, the characters, so I bought Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 for the PlayStation 1. I started with number 9 and I was obsessed with it. I tried breaking my way through Final Fantasy 8 using as many GFs as possible because they were overpowered in that game. Almost made it, but failed. So Final Fantasy 9 and Final Fantasy 8 were awesome video games. So Final Fantasy 7 had to be good, right? Right? No, it wasn't. In fact, I thought it was a really lazy game. So before we go into Final Fantasy VII, you need to know this one crucial detail. I did not hear a single syllable about this game's reputation from anyone else before playing it my first time. Not by people, not by magazines, not by ratings, and not by hype. I was too busy getting caught up in Ocarina of Time, and the internet was only in its baby steps. So I went into Final Fantasy VII without a single drop of outside influence, and my isolated opinion thinks this game was a massive letdown. So let's break it down. The first thing that really made me mad was the characters, starting with Cloud. Check out his first 3 sentences. In his first remark, he cuts off his teammate and says, "I don't care what your names are. Once this job's over, I'm out of here." A little ahead in the second sentence, he cuts off Barrett and says, "I'm not here for a lecture. Let's just hurry." In his third one in the elevator, he says to Barrett again, "It's not my problem." When it comes to Cloud Strife, because I'm an inherent peacemaker and hate causing unnecessary trouble for other people, Cloud Strife isn't likable in any way for me because he outright doesn't care about the people around him or outright isn't courteous to anyone. And don't think this is just Cloud Strife. I don't find value in the other characters as well. Barrett curses and acts like a thug, at which swearing to me doesn't really add to any character. It's more an emotion to me than a character trait. Aeris is a cool character, but a little too much into the clouds for my taste. I like Tifa the most, but she honestly doesn't feel like she contributes a lot to the plot. She feels more like a side character to me more than anyone else. In the end, the story doesn't reel me in because I don't care about these characters too much. They're too far from my personality's liking to get invested with them. Now, the second and last complaint I have about this game is huge. And what disappoints me in the gaming community is that nobody ever acknowledges it, and it's kind of jarring to me that nobody can see it right in front of them. It makes me wonder if it's a problem only I bother to notice and it's just me, but I'm guessing that the game's large nostalgic value canceled it out for a lot of people. Remember, a lot of people were hyped from the game from media outlets. I wasn't. So maybe that was the big reason for me and why I happened to pick it up from the usual Final Fantasy fan. I know that sounds really bold to say, but hear me out. I seriously think Final Fantasy VII players were too focused on the other outstanding positives of the game to see this problem clearly, while the blind newcomers could see it bright as day like me. That's why there are others out there like me that are disappointed with this game as well.
So I really stuck with it as hard as I could, and after every 30 minutes of play, I just waited for something worthwhile or interesting to happen, and then once I got 3 hours in and found myself getting really bored, I just couldn't continue. Where I loved the intro, loved the story build-up, loved the music, and loved the visual style, especially the FMV, I didn't like the combat, I didn't like the random encounters, I didn't like navigating and exploring, and I couldn't care less about my characters. I couldn't stand any of them. And at the end of the day, no matter how much I love the cinematic appeal to this game, that's what this is. A game. And I did not like the game or the way it played. And I did not care an ounce enough for what was going on after 3 hours of my time to carry on with it.
While true, Ocarina of Time does a damn fine job taking everything from A Link to the Past and incorporating it into the 3D world, playing Ocarina of Time takes a lot more out of me than A Link to the Past. Ocarina of Time is a much bigger game, and while that may be a positive point to bring up for some, for me, it's a flaw. What may take me an hour to accomplish in A Link to the Past may take me several hours to do in Ocarina of Time. Collecting heart pieces, traveling from one location to another, it just seems much more comfortable to do in A Link to the Past. My point is, I have to be in a certain mood to play something like Ocarina of Time. I gotta convince myself that I'm going to be playing this for some time. I don't have this mindset with A Link to the Past, I just pick it up and play it. Could it be nostalgia? I don't know.
And you can't blame the Final Fantasy VII fans. Nostalgia rules out negativity, and then they don't look for the weaknesses in their own game. That's what it does. Alright, here we go. This is the big secret flaw to Final Fantasy VII that will drive some players away. This game's ability pacing is god awful. Now check this out. When you learn the materia system, for the first hour I was okay with this. Introducing new game mechanics isn't wrong, but for the next 6 hours of the game, those are still the only significant abilities I had. How long does it flipping take to get another decent ability in this game? And no, materia like Mug doesn't count as a big step up in ability development. I started losing my patience rapidly spamming the same abilities over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Why does it take so ungodly long, and why is it so ungodly tedious to learn abilities in this game? In Final Fantasy IX, you just participate in what? Approximately 20 battles for a common ability, and boom, you learned an ability and can start learning another ability. Bad pacing is one of my biggest killjoys in RPGs, and so I can't ever say I'll enjoy Final Fantasy VII. I just can't because of this. It's a huge deal breaker. In conclusion, I have come back to Final Fantasy VII several times with 100% strategy guides with all sorts of tips from people, and I'm left with the same massive disappointing gap that I got from my first time playing it every single time. The story is extremely boring, and the gameplay is extremely boring. They each have a major element that completely deters from my chance of getting fun from it for my personal taste. Alright, I'm done. If I convinced you, I convinced you. And if you still hate me, just hate me for all eternity. I don't care. Let's just move on already. Oh my god. Now it's time to throw in my 2 cents. What is it I look forward to the most in the upcoming Zelda Wii U the most? Well, to answer that, I need to go back to my first Zelda game and explain what got me into this series in the first place and why I still play it today faithfully. When I started playing Ocarina of Time, one thing that stands out to me from it is the large variety of environments. That is the #1 main reason I play Zelda. It is the prettiest series hands down in my book and is backed up with exploration. There's plenty to go see in every Zelda game. The more there is to see and the prettier it is, the more I will love that particular Zelda game. It's why Twilight Princess is my top favorite, because every dungeon in that game brings out the eruption and starts overflowing that peak immersion for me. But there's one Zelda game I despise. This game offends the very reason I played Zelda in the first place. A Link Between Worlds. I'm going to be upfront with you. I hate A Link Between Worlds. I really do. This game swirls up so much rage inside of me whenever I look at it, and it is a dire insult to this series I love. Now, this is something I don't enjoy from my personality. Being a natural optimist in video games, I try whatever I can to paint things a prettier color. But in the process, sometimes I lie to myself, and then I end up lying to you guys when something actually bothers me. In the past, I've said that Link Between Worlds was okay, but that was a lie because my optimism clouded my judgment. But in the end, I really do loathe Link Between Worlds. Okay, of course I'll explain why. But first, let me say what I don't mind about this game. 1. I don't mind that it's modeled after A Link to the Past. 2. I don't mind that Ravio is holding the items instead of the dungeons. I can't say I like it, but Link Between Worlds deserves its own gimmicks to make it unique like every other Zelda game does. 3. I don't mind the story. It doesn't interest me, but I can look over that. Now, for the first thing out of 2 that really bugs me. This is gonna get me so much hate. Oh, wow. Alright, here we go. This game, it's damn ugly. Yes, you heard that right, but hear me out for a bit. Now, what I heard is that they took A Link to the Past model textures and tried to upgrade them to these Nintendo 3DS standards for this reimagining, and it doesn't work at all in my opinion. Because of this, putting the textureless models from the Super Nintendo and squeezing it into the high quality of today's gaming where everything is blazing with textures, it looks really jagged. However, what puts the icing on the cake and where it really annoys me is that the character models look the absolute worst from it. So it's upsetting to me having to stare at it all the time from Link when he moves around. Now, I could sit here all day and talk about graphics, and you can say to yourself all day, oh, these graphics look awesome. So it's a waste of time going any further into this because, like it or not, no one can control what graphics people like or dislike. So let's move on to the second point. The second point comes from is that this game is way too annoyingly fast with its frame rate. Now you're wondering, what's wrong with that? Everything. I play Zelda because it is slow. It gives me the perfect opportunity to absorb my environment that I get into, and because of it, I remember it. It leaves an impact. I treasure it deeply. I take in its environments. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video. This is everything to me in Zelda. So changing the pace to the more compulsive and impatient world that we live in, yeah, I have a real problem with that. And this was true. When I played Link Between Worlds out of obligation, what did I remember? Hardly anything. I was storming through rooms so fast it didn't get the chance for me to photograph it and cherish it for years to come, like other Zelda games do easily, and that's offensive to me. Maybe other Zelda players enjoy it because of the Link to the Past reimagining, some do like the graphics, some love the fast speed, whatever works for you, it's fine. But for me, this isn't Zelda for me. This isn't about taking it slow this time, which is why I adored Ocarina of Time in the first place. And for that, it breaks my heart through and through and back again every time I see this game.
Oh my god.
Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advance is one of the most addicting, flashiest games I've ever seen on the handheld. It's easily in a league of its own when it comes to RPGs. It's very fast, very engaging, it wastes no time with very little grinding. The spells and djinns, I think that's what they're called, are awesome. The story was magnificent, definitely in a class of its own. But this is why I love Golden Sun the most. It came at a time in my life where I needed it the most. 2009 was a really extremely hard year for me, and playing this game, it patched up all of my wounds I had with stress at the time. I played it to the end, and I enjoyed every second of it. I was extremely grateful for this game when it came when it did. However, Golden Sun is the first half of the story. Golden Sun: The Lost Age, the game after that, is the second half of the game and the final entry to this list. Golden Sun: The Lost Age is... This game is... Damn it, so many expectations crushed. It's hard for me to give this game a positive. Alright, the one big positive I can give about The Lost Age is that the combat is still really engaging, just like the first game. But have you heard the phrase that graphics aren't everything? It's how I feel with the combat. It's not everything about what made Golden Sun so great. So, let's run down the large grocery list of everything that disappointed me or infuriated me about this game. 1. Felix is a stupid character. I seriously didn't like him from the first game. Now he's the main protagonist. 2. The silent protagonist trope now switches from Isaac in the first game to Felix in this game, which is super jarring. 3. The characters aren't interesting like the last time, and to add things on, they don't develop that well at all. 4. The abilities are a lot more tamer and a lot less practical than the first game. It just made battles more repetitive. 5. There is a lot of traveling and a lot of open space, making traveling more like Pokemon Pearl. 6. The story isn't interesting and half the time events that happen aren't plot relevant. 7. The side quests are stupid and aren't worth your time. 8. 1/3 of the game is in the water on a boat, and let me tell you, I hate oceans in RPGs, and I especially hate this because I spent tens of hours on it. 9. Too much ocean space. Put locations closer together, god damn it. 10. The locations in the ocean are all boring. And finally, 11. Finding the 3 pieces of the trident and welding them together to kill the Poseidon boss is, sorry, I have to say it, it's a total bitch. And then, the game gets good. Finally, after 2/3 of the game, when you reach the other side of the game world, the game returns to its former glory from the first game. Especially with meeting up with Isaac's party to finish up the game with a total of 8 characters to control. Now, in conclusion, I know you expect me to start praising the game after this long, tedious 2/3 of the game, but that's the huge problem, and I'm going to do it again. It's 2/3 of the fucking game. After hiking through all that garbage just to reach the cream filling of a video game and then giving it a free pass just because the fun finally starts in the late game? No, the pile of hatred for it from my disappointment is too strong and consistent with this game. I would say it was around 10 to 15% of my total time I would say I enjoyed this game that lived up to it being a true sequel. Now that is what I call a legendary monster of a disappointment.